Hi, welcome to Lit with Lloyd. I am your host, Lloyd Russell. And I want to give a shout out to KCAT for producing and hosting our show. My guest today is Dr. H. James Harrington. And let me tell you that if I spent the next 30 minutes talking about all of his accolades, I still wouldn't be done. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick one fact and one quote to start with, and then we'll get right to Jim. The fact is that Jim was the I forgot what it's called, of Goodwill, the ambassador of Goodwill for President Clinton. And the quote is, and I'll make sure I get it right, he writes books that other consultants use. So that'll give you an idea of how he is perceived in the industry. So with that, welcome, Jim. It's really a privilege to have you on the show.
Well, it's exciting to be here. Not only exciting to be here, it's exciting to live here. We're really fortunate to live in this wonderful environment. That's just a beautiful day today. How can you be anything but excited? And we're happy to be here, and I want to thank you very much for inviting me to the chance to share some of my ideas.
Good. All right. Well, I'm going to start with a little bit of background before we get into your book from 2020, the acronym being TIME, and Total Innovative Management Excellence. What did you do for President Clinton? What was your position, and how did you interact with him?
Basically, I was at the time president of the American Society for Quality Control, which is a professional society, and so I was doing a lot of work with Congress as far as trying to be more competitive on an international basis and setting up some of that activity. And at the same time, China had made me their official advisor on quality matters. So I served in between the two of them. And this was back in, about 1980, when we were just starting to go back into China. We've been in Taiwan forever, and pretty much defending that side of the Chinese activities. But about 82, we decided to reestablish relationships with China, and I was one of the first. So in the first year that they invited somebody over, and they went over, and it was exciting because you'd walk down the street and crowd would crowd around you just to look at you.
Wow.
It was a wonderful period of time.
But in the 90s, of course, is when Clinton was president. So how did you get that position, and did you ever meet him?
Oh, yes. I was fortunate enough to meet him when he was a governor. Initially, he had me in to speak at one of the conferences that he put on when he was governor, and so I picked it up. And then Greenwich from the Senate got to know me, and so I began to work with their group that was bringing business back to the United States. So that's where I got deeply involved.
Yeah.
And so it seemed like quality was sort of a neutral thing that was really great because everybody was interested in quality. I could go into Russia, and people in Russia was very happy to see it show up. And even though we had that really hard wall between the two of us, the idea that we're talking about how we can make things better for everybody sort of broke the wall down, and you established relationships. And so that's where the idea came out of the fact, where I was going, it seemed like we built up a lot of friendships. We built up a lot of long-term relationships. People had you back, and they wanted to gain more information.
Are those relationships still in effect?
Not as much as it used to be. Pretty much I've been confined to a wheelchair, so I can't travel like I used to. I was on the road continuously. I was a fellow. I was with Ernst & Young as the head of their performance improvement development activities, and so we had over 1,000 consultants all over the world.
Wow.
So we called upon to travel a great deal.
Okay, but you've been doing this for just a few decades. So how did you even get started in business? What led you into business?
Well, I guess I'd have to say it's my father. My father was deeply involved. He was the lead inspector for IBM back before they hired Thomas Watson Sr.
Wow.
So we've been a close connection there, and so his whole thought pattern in life was, Jim, when you get to be a man, I'd like to see you come back to work for IBM. That's And so I spent 40 years with IBM, first of all as a project manager, and drifted between 3 plants that I had. I had the quality relationship between Fujisawa, Japan, Mainz, Germany, and San Jose, California. And so I was on the move about every 2 weeks. I'd move to a different country.
Wow.
So
how when you were in other countries, how long did you have to stay there at a time?
I'd stay a week or 2 weeks and move on. So
wow. And you were headquartered in San Jose.
yes.
Okay, at the HQ.
I was living up in Los Gatos, up on Overlook Road. Had a beautiful, beautiful view. Just, in fact, we had half an hour to kill, so we drove up and I looked out the view again to just really enjoy it.
Wow.
We're just so lucky to live in this type of environment.
Well, for those who are either watching for the first time or just didn't pay attention to it, KCAT is in Los Gatos. It's on the high school campus. So, you are a longtime native of this area. So you spent 40 years at IBM, and did you have multiple jobs, or did you basically have one type of thing that you worked on all those years?
No, I went up through the ladder, right? I really started for IBM earlier than that. I started for IBM working when I was 12 years old as a caddy. And so I caddied on their golf course. And then in the summer, I would work as a lifeguard. And so when I got to be 17, graduating from high school, they immediately put me into a 4-year program that they ran themselves, an apprenticeship program for IBM.
Wow.
So that was an exciting period. Where really companies invested in their people. You felt that you were a member of a family. You wouldn't think you would have offers to go someplace else at a lot more money. You wouldn't think about leaving your job to go there.
Wow.
It was such an exciting period at that point in time, where it was that family feeling within IBM that they had a commitment to you for a lifetime, and they were going to help you move along.
It kind of seems like that may not be what's the feel of companies now. I mean, it seems like a lot of people are going from company to company, and maybe that family feeling is not as prevalent as it was back then.
Well, certainly it turns out that we're turning to be more professionals than members of a unit. We're a programmer. We're a quality specialist. You're focusing on marketing and sales. Not the fact when you would walk up to a person, you used to say, "Where do you work?" And you'd say, "IBM." And now you say, "Where do you work?" And say, "Oh, I'm a programmer." And so we're turning out to be more and more interrelated, so that we have a bigger connection to our technology, the thing that we're interested in. we spend more and more time by ourselves,
Uh-huh.
and not with a family. We're turning out our families are more and more homes today are getting to be like hotels. You go there to eat and sleep. That's it. And you don't think about the fact that you should have Sunday dinner always together.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that whole feeling is
Yeah.
one of the things that I really feel sad to see us slip away from. But
And that seems to be pretty much common, you're finding in the different companies and groups you talk to?
that's I believe that's very, very common in the developed countries. And as the countries develop, they focus into that range of feeling that they're professionals rather than families.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Interesting perspective.
I ask you, you don't have to answer this one, but do you want your sons to go to work for K-Cats? No, you have other. You want them to be a doctor, or a lawyer, or you want them to be something else, right? And so you always seems like at the time you followed your family. Your grandfather was this, and your grandfather is, your father is,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you're
yeah.
going to be it, and you're all proud of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's I think that was part of the pride that we have in the United States, and I think it's still a big part of our culture is the fact that we have that feeling of kinship, where we're proud of what we did in the past.
Yeah.
And we're living off from a lot of that.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned that you were very connected with China.
Yes.
Do you still have a connection with them? And what's the relationship between the United States and China right now in the business world?
It's very competitive. China is certainly destined to probably be the leading country in the world.
Wow.
There's very little doubt about that. You look at technology development. For every technology graduate that we're putting out today, they're putting out 10.
Mm.
And if you got 10 times the assets, and your technology people are your assets, if you got 10 times the assets, you're going to be far ahead of them totally when you start talking about who's going to develop the future technologies and where it's going. And so it's very hard. In fact, India is putting out 5 to 1. And certainly that's has to be a real concern, because that's where our technologies are going. People talk about innovation and creativity, and that's what they're teaching in the technology areas, rather than economics that we're focusing on.
Wow.
So it's I think it's a real challenge. I think it's something we've got to wake up to. We've got to realize that if we continue along right now, China in 5 years will have graduated more university technical people than we have in the United States, totally from any age group, all combined.
Just from the 5 years.
Just for 5 years.
Wow.
So every 5 years, they will double their technical capabilities over yours.
Well, we had Ann Bridges. Do you know that name?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, we had her on quite a while ago, and I know she focuses on the fact that China is providing a lot of the raw materials for our digital world. So that was the first I had heard of that, but this is even more dramatic than what she was talking about.
We couldn't make a radar set if we didn't buy materials from them. They control it to that degree.
Wow.
And they're very, very focused. They have a 5-year plan, and in the 5 years, they're saying by 2025 that they'll be the world's leader in technology.
Wow.
Number one. Right now, they're down around 7 or 8. And the United States is falling. We used to be the leader. Now, if you look at some of the surveys, you'll find like we're number 3, we're number 7. So we're really, you can't stand still and think that you're going to be successful. If you're not moving, you're failing.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of the fact that no matter how good you are, you got to be continuously strive to be better.
Yeah.
Moving forward. So
Yeah.
the whole area of creativity and innovation, I think, is the focus point that we've accepted right now, and you're seeing more and more focus on the engineering field rather than the manufacturing field. But I think beyond that, we're going to have to go beyond that. We're going to have to talk about optimization of the total best resources so that you actually have the biggest impact when you combine the technologies together, and that's going to be the real key. And that's what AI is all about. They're really, we sort of feel good with the fact, we say, a computer can't be any smarter than the information it's fed into them. And so I'll buy that. So they take all the information from one person, and they take the information from 10 people, and they take the information from 100 people. You take that information from 100 people, think how much smarter it is than any one of those 100.
Yeah.
And so the computer is, the whole AI technology and expanding technology is moving forward. We talk about focusing on cars run off from electricity, battery-powered cars. And we say, oh, okay. Well, and in fact, I was down to Sunnyvale and sat there, stopped my car. Car pulled up beside me. I looked over into the car. Nobody there. I almost lost my teeth. And I get back and I double took. And boy, when that light turned green, I took off down the road. Up at Hades. But if you think about it, we're focusing on, okay, we're going to get rid of gas. We're going to go over to battery powered. But hydrogen is so much more effective than that. You're talking about 10, 20 times greater effectivity than that. And then you get to what the technology really is. We're going to be driving our cars off from seawater. And just its availability and the amount of price change. What happens when you actually take away that need for gas and all that business of ours collapse?
Yeah. All right. I want to come back to you personally. We're going to take a quick break, and then I want to ask you about the books, all the books you've written. We want to get some personal info, even though I know you have many ideas and concepts and things to talk about. I also want to talk about your book. All right. We'll be back in just a minute.
Thank you to the City of Montessorino for their continued support of KCAT Public Media. The City of Montessorino has enabled KCAT to inspire, educate, entertain, and inform our community through the magic of television and digital media for over 38 years. Thank you.
Yours bad, my computer continuously misspells my name. I can't understand that.
And we are back, if you didn't already hear him, with Dr. H. James Harrington. Jim, you have written many books. How many books have you written? What got you started in writing them, and how frequently are you writing them, your business books? And then we're going to talk about time.
Okay. Well, what got me started is IBM focused on technology is an important thing, and you should write a lot of technical papers, and that was one of the way you got promoted in IBM, with good technical papers that was published. And I was doing that. And then I began to realize that my technical papers was showing up in other people's books, and they call them their the words I'd written.
Wow.
5 years before that shows up in somebody else's, and now they say that this Joe says this, and not Jim, but Joe.
Oh, wow.
And I said, books is where you gain control.
Yep.
Technical papers, you don't.
That makes perfect sense.
So I said, I'm going to write some books. And it was an ideal time. I was chairman of the board of the American Society for Quality, and on my board was the president of GM. And so I set up a cycle where I hit 5 of the presidents of the biggest companies and interviewed them personally and talked about their theories and what they thought. And I put out a book on driving the best.
Wow.
And
that was your first one?
That was the second one. But
okay.
But that was the one that was really fun because I got, I had people like Akers I got to sit down with and talk with for almost 4 hours about what he was doing and why he was doing it.
So what year was this?
Oh, that was probably about 1985.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how many books have you written since then?
Oh, about over 60.
Unbelievable.
I try to get out 3 a year.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I have a problem because writing a book is so easy and it's so much fun, but publishing it is hell. Excuse me if you're not.
That word will probably be okay.
It's once you get it done, going through and looking for the commas and the questions, and you get into all this stuff. Oh, who's thinking this now? You can't think that because that's somebody else, and you don't know. You can't write it because he's thinking it. So you got to. You didn't have all that stuff, and so I find that the hard part is getting somebody to work with me to pick up my stuff and take it forward.
Well, you must have more than one publisher per book, right?
Yeah, I have 4 or 5 that I work with. McGraw Hill, Prentice Hall, Taylor and Francis, Quality Press. So it depends. Normally, it ends up I have the person I'm working with will come up with an idea, and we'll agree with an idea, and then we'll write a contract where they'll pay me to write the book, and then I'm stuck. Now I've got a deadline.
Do you write most books solo, or do you write in like for this one we're going to talk about? There's a co-writer. Do you usually have a co-writer, or do you normally do it solo? I
always draft the book, and I will pick experts in the fields that. In this book, I talked about AI. Well, I know a lot about AI. I know enough so that I can fool you. But I want somebody that knew enough that they could teach me. And so what you'll actually do, I'll try to pick somebody that's really a leader in that field so that I can have somebody. I have a simple rule. Always hire people that are smarter than yourself. That way you learn something every time.
And are you actually able to find smarter people than you all the time?
When you get to be 94 years old, you've got so many things you want to do. I the list of books I want to write, that I've got on my thing to write, is 18 different subjects that I'd like to write on. And I would enjoy doing any one of them.
Okay, well, notice I did not ask you how old you are. I just want to point that out, that it came from you voluntarily.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about, well, I'm pointing to it because it's on the table, but let's talk about total innovative management excellence, also known as TIME. That's 2020 was when it published.
Yes.
How did that come about? How did you connect with Frank Vole? And what is the book doing for the industry?
Well, one part at a time.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
How did you come to write the book?
Okay. I came to write the book because there was so much competition going on. I was at the time I was with Ernst & Young, and so you got to see this very big total picture of business. And I'd go into finance, and they had a thing they called activity-based costing. This is the only way to go to really improve the way you're going to operate, reduce your costs. So they had this thing, activity-based costing. And then I'd go into industrial engineering, and they would have automation, mechanization, and this is the only way. And then I would go over into the technology area, and they had software programs that they were pushing. You'd go into development engineering, and they had research programs they were pushing. Everybody was pushing for this extra money. And in business, you have a pool of money. Most of it's already spent. There's a little bit of money. Maybe in an average company, there may be 10 to 15% discretionary spending. As the president, I can say, I would like to do this. And everybody's competing for that. And what I was seeing was happening, they were all fighting with each other. And most of them were saying the same thing. They're all saying, we got to work as a team. We got to build a culture that's supportive. We've got to be more customer-centric. We got to look at the complete supply chain. And they all tied together, but they all were competing against each other. And they say, and by the way, President, if we're going to go with supply chain, that's the only thing you've got to concentrate on this year. And it couldn't happen. So what would we do? We'd go into a big company, and they split up a little bit for everybody, but not give anybody enough to really do a great job.
Yeah.
So my idea was here is let's bring these together and look at where the commonalities are. And so what I did is I made a list of all the tools that they were selling. And it was a 1,100 plus. 1,100 plus. And anybody wants a copy of the list, I'll give you a copy of the list.
Wow.
And when you got through with it, they all were pretty much there. There was this duplication. It was the same thought pattern. They put a little different name out. They put a little different twist on it so that they could be unique, so that they'd sell something separate by themselves. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to bring them together into a homogeneous focus. And so I sat down and I made a list of what I call the 10 S's, the things that drive performance within an organization, forgetting about the fact that I'm a quality guy or I'm an engineering fellow. Certainly I forgot I was a sales fellow. And from this, then I said, once I did this, then I could put together a strategy of how I can actually bring this together to bring them in harmony. Not only bring them in harmony, but to equalize them so that sometimes it's good to have high quality and slow production, and for other times it's better to have the opposite way around. You want to get more out right away. And you have times when you got new products coming down and it just bogs everything down. So how do you actually continuously look at the optimum performance point in this organization? And that's where the idea came out of. And so I laid out the pyramid of what I thought it was, and then I developed a book around that. And when I felt weak in something, I'd go out to somebody and say, "Hey, you're really good in AI. I need you to let's the two of us do this chapter on AI. And so we worked. That's the way it came together.
And how has the book been received?
Very, very good. Very good. You know, it's I'm not really trying to make a big boom out of it. I really believe that what we need to do is to work on the culture of what's going on. And I think the culture is a key point. But people got so tied up in change. We're going to do this one thing, and we got to have all this change take place. We got to have a new culture. We got to define the culture. Well, culture really is your background, your history, your beliefs, your heritage, your thoughts, your religion. You know, it's that thing that's inside you that you believe.
Uh-huh.
And I think that more of what we're doing is we play with our personality. The personality is how we impact with one another. I can change the way I impact with you very easily, but I can switch back again if you say something nasty about my wife. I'll switch back like mad. And so I think that what I'm working with is that differential. If you want to think about it, here's a rubber band. Just take this rubber band and do like this. Now you see how you're going to stretch it. Now, if somebody came along, you get a new CEO comes in, he comes in and he says, I'm going to stretch it this way now. And he sets it there, and because it's a new CEO, he has a new culture, we do that. But what happened? As soon as I took the CEO and put a new CEO in, it bounced back right where it was.
Uh-huh.
So what happens, unless you keep the personality for 2 or 3 cycles, you don't really change. What you actually do is you come back to where you were. And so the whole idea of the whole change activity has to be a longer, slower paced activity, where you talk about, let's build upon the strengths that we have and move forward from that, rather than try to throw away what we have and start over again.
Yeah. Okay. Has this book led to anything else that you are publishing or have to prepare or want to prepare?
Well, that's yes. You bring up a very good point, because I just finished the manuscript for the follow-on to this, which is Time, which is the workbook for them, to how you actually implement this over a 3-year period. And that's the type of period I'm talking about, where we're actually slowly bring about the change in the organization rather than a drastic change, where you actually sit down and you look like, well, how do you want things to be different 5 years from now, and how are you going to measure the behavior patterns? We're talking about really changing behavioral patterns. It's and that's the drastic part. You can easily change the process, but to change the way I behave, that's a tough one.
And are you hearing from companies that this is helping to make that happen?
Yes, I've been lucky enough to. It isn't a revolutionary thing. It's an evolutionary thing, I'm afraid. It's looking at some of the work that I did with Cape Canaveral when we were working down there, and we wanted to make some changes. So I picked up some ideas that I see that's filtered into my whole thought pattern. Our people are the combination of our lives, not an individual piece, not an individual class.
Yeah, but well, that's what you're trying to teach. But are people learning it?
Oh yeah.
And companies are learning it?
Oh yes, I think.
Oh, that's great.
I think that you'll see people realizing that there is a real challenge taking place in the world that's going to be drastically different if we don't do something.
Wow.
And very quickly, there'd be no reason for us to be in existence the way things are going.
Wow. Is the book popular or gaining any traction in other countries?
Yes, we did parts of this in other countries. We're actually I had an operation in Dubai for a long period of time. In fact, part of this came out of Dubai. The whole thing, as far as organizational structure, came out of Dubai. The Dubai government hired me to come in, and they said, "Jim, we want to be more customer-centric." I said, "What?" Oh, he says, "We want to be more customer-centric." He says, "Well, yeah, what do you want me to do?" He says, "Well, reorganize us." And so it set apart, and we had a contract to reorganize the city of Dubai,
Wow.
which we actually did. Went in, interviewed all the managers, and looked at what they were doing, rewrote the job descriptions, changed the, basically went through career paths, the development for the key managers. So many of the managers got to be managers because that was the only place to go. That was the next promotion. You couldn't, and you got the prestige. And so we tried to establish that career path where you could go either side, wherever you're most effective. And a lot of them managers didn't like to do appraisals. They didn't like to complain because people didn't show up on time.
Yeah.
But
all right. Let me ask you a different question. You've written, 60 plus books in the business world. Have you ever considered writing something that is not business related, like maybe a novel or something like that?
Well, yeah. Last year I wrote one that was called Fireside Companion. It was 19 short stories, and I enjoyed it. It was fun, and I'm right at the present time. I'm just finishing up a book called The Irish Pirates, which is about my great-great-great-grandfather who got hung for being a pirate.
Whoa!
So it's both of them fictional, and they're working on another one right now on. It's called The Boy Who Lived Three Lives. And so you gotta, I think that you've got to have a wide range of things you're thinking about, or else your mind will get stagnant.
Yeah, well, your mind is definitely not stagnant. All right, one last question. I'm going back to the very beginning of the interview. Have you actually met Bill Clinton?
Yes.
How is he in person?
He was very, very friendly. Very, very outgoing. I met him. I had the closest interface with him when he was governor. And
you mentioned the governor thing. Yeah.
We had dinner with it and that sort of thing. Otherwise, were casual type things.
Yeah.
More focused through the Senate and that activity. We worked trying to get some quality issue made law, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the governor thing, and I guess I didn't realize that you actually interacted with him directly. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, there's a lot of wonderful people out there. The thing I find out is throughout the world, people are fantastic. There isn't any country that you go into that the people aren't wonderful. It's a few people that get money hungry or power hungry that sort of distort everything. I've spent some time in Iran, and I had some wonderful time there where I helped the company started. And Dubai was a wonderful experience. I was lucky. Sheikh Khalid bin Zayed, who was part of the royal family, was my partner there, and
wow,
that opened up many doors that would have never been opened.
Wow. Well, we're going to have to stop, but maybe we'll just consider this interview part A, because I think that you've got a whole bunch more to tell us, and hopefully we'll have a chance to do this again.
I would Would love to tell you some stories.
All right. Well,
When you get my age, you've got nothing but stories to tell.
well, thank you for being on. And so we're going to have to stop, but it was a real pleasure.
Well, I enjoyed talking with you.
Good. Thank you.
Sometime we'll have to get a cup of coffee and spend some more time together.
Okay, it sounds great.
I
All
want to
right.
hear your side of the story.
My side is just to interview you. That's what my side is. All right. So we are closing the book on today's podcast. I do want to thank KCAT again for producing our show and hosting it. And a special shout out this time to Dr. H. James Harrington for a fascinating interview. And if you would like to see more of the interviews, you can go on lloyd.show /YouTube, and there'll be some others on there that you can take a look at. So that'll do it for us, and we'll see you next time.
You just heard Lit with Lloyd here on KCAT Radio. Explore all our KCAT original programming at kcat.org/radio.